Finally, a movie that tackles every young person's biggest fear, having conversations on the phone. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jake, the Scary Story Guy, and today we're reviewing my favorite horror movie from 2022 so far, The Black Phone. No spoilers here, folks. This is a recent release, and it's available to stream on Peacock, so go check it out. The Black Phone is the story of a young boy in 1970s Denver who gets kidnapped by a masked villain called the Grabber, but during his captivity, he discovers that help is available from an unexpected source. The Black Phone was directed by Scott Derrickson and stars Ethan Hawke. And incidentally, these are two guys that different people I know have personal vendettas against for interesting reasons. First of all, Scott Derrickson. So I was recently on the Jack of No Trades podcast making an authoritative Halloween movie guide. I'll put a link to that in the description. And one of the other guys I was on the podcast with went on this like 3-minute long monologue about why he's frustrated with Scott Derrickson. I won't spoil it here because I'm actually going to include that clip at the end of this video, so stay tuned after my little, closing theme song. It's very funny stuff. Time well spent. As for Ethan Hawke, my wife absolutely despises Ethan Hawke to the point where she can't even watch anything he's in. And as far as I can tell, the sole reason for this is that she didn't like his facial hair in Before Sunrise. She watched like 20 minutes of it and then literally just walked out like, nope, I can't do it. He looks like such a douche, leaving me and my buddy to watch the romance movie by ourselves. We both loved it, by the way. Okay, so I guess the first thing to mention about The Black Phone is that it feels like a Stephen King creation. It is not, though. It is based on a short story that was written by a guy named Joe Hill, full name, Joseph Hillstrom King, who is himself a Stephen King creation. Guy's such a chip off the old block that the transitive property actually takes effect here, and The Black Phone is officially part of the Stephen King pantheon. No, I'm not taking any comments on that at this time. It checks all the King boxes. You've got a young protagonist, nostalgia for the 70s and 80s, an abusive alcoholic parent, a story of real life horror with a supernatural twist, the whole shebang. Honestly, if I was going to compare this movie to anything, it would be the recent film adaptation of Stephen King's It. It's intense enough to easily earn an R rating, but fundamentally, this is a movie about kids that's kind of for kids. I don't mean to say that adults won't have a good time with this, nor do I mean to say that it's been marketed to kids. What I'm saying is, I guess it feels like the ultimate audience for this movie is a group of 12-year-old boys at a sleepover who want to watch something they know they're not allowed to. If this movie had come out in 2005, I promise you I would have found a way to see it, and it would have become my favorite movie of all time. As it stands, this is still one of my favorite horror movies to get released in a really long while. Now, despite being a gritty, violent movie about child abductions, The Black Phone manages to be a fairly joyful exploration of those years at the border of childhood and adolescence where you're starting to greet the harsh realities of life, but can still be terrified by a campy old horror B-movie on a tiny 70s TV set. The performances are all really good, but most of the attention is rightly going to be paid to Ethan Hawke. This dude just had a blast. Ethan Hawke is one of those rare actors who can really bring it at an elite level from an acting perspective, but seemingly will also appear in any movie he's asked to. He'll jump from Before Sunrise to The Purge to Boyhood to Sinister 2 to First Reformed, and we're like, what is going on here? And he's just like, you, I'm fucking Ethan Hawke. He's such a great villain. Honestly, if it weren't for Mia Goth in Pearl, I'd be talking about this as the horror performance of the year. There's just like this, I don't know, this Willy Wonka quality to him. Not the old one, the Johnny Depp one. In a good way. He's freaking built in this movie, too. He must have been bulking up for the Northman around the same time or something, because there is one scene in this movie where he looks genuinely scary. Speaking of scary, the mask he's in. Let's talk about that. I actually didn't notice this in the theater on first watch, just because there's so much going on, but on rewatch, I realized the Grabber's mask subtly changes in every scene he's in. Sometimes it's got a creepy smile, or sometimes it's frowning, or it's got no mouth at all, or it's got horns. It's almost like it's reflecting the Grabber's multiple personalities or something. It certainly makes the movie effective at portraying his moods, at least. Really liked that. Also, shouts to Madeline McGraw, who plays the little sister here. She's gotta be the best foul-mouthed kid in a movie since Kick-Ass. She brings some, like, heart to this movie. She's got at least 4 lines that just made me laugh out loud. And there's also this one scene that requires some really intense and grown-up acting from her that you watch and you're just like, holy shit. As far as the horror elements here, this movie isn't like scary. Like I said, my best comparison would probably be the It movie from a few years ago. But there were a couple jump scares that I thought worked really well. There's one scene mid-movie where the tension all of a sudden just like ratchets up to 11, major like sweaty palms moment. But again, don't go in expecting tempting to like be lying awake at night because you can't sleep because you heard a noise. It's more a fun time than anything. It's really just a return to form for Blumhouse as far as I'm concerned. Honestly, this is probably their first great movie since 2017 when both Split and Get Out were released. So, you know, let's hope we get more of that. And you know what? I'm feeling generous today. This movie hits all the right notes for me, so I am gonna give The Black Phone 4.5 stars out of 5. Let's go! Alright guys, October's almost over, but stay tuned for more spooky content, because I'm not quite done. Thank you for watching my video. Here's hoping you survive to see the next one, and stay tuned for a clip from the excellent Jack of No Trades podcast.
Talk about your feud with him on Twitter. I'm just like, you've got an axe to grind with Scott Derrickson.
Oh man, let me just be brief with this. So Scott Derrickson, you know, I think he's a good director. I like Doctor Strange. Sinister was pretty solid. And I do want to see The Black Phone. But anyway, he had a tweet a little bit ago, and he also directed The Exorcism of Emily Rose. And he was tweeting at somebody saying, "Oh, like I'm a young person. Like, I feel like I'm never going to make a movie. How old were you?" And something along the lines of, "How old were you when you made your first feature?" And he said, "Oh, I was so and so. I was such and such years old, 30-something years old when I made Exorcism of Emily Rose." And I'm like, "Hold on, that wasn't your first feature, Scott. You go back through his filmography. He actually directed a Hellraiser movie, Hellraiser Inferno, and I think it went direct to video." And so I keep raising this issue with him on Twitter, and I go, "Hey, didn't you make a Hellraiser movie?" And then
You got the
he'll
receipts.
"Yeah, I got the receipts." And if you go through my Twitter, I don't tweet a whole lot. So if you just go look at my tweets, you'll see all the things that I actually tweeted at him. He'll tweet something random. And it's my older brother's in on this too, because we talked about it and we're like, why is he like running away from his first feature film? It's his first project. And he's acting like you even look in his bio and he's like, "Oh, I'm the director of Exorcism, Emily Rose, Sinister, Doctor Strange, Black Phone." I'm like, why didn't you mention Hellraiser, dude? Like, it doesn't look like it's a bad movie. I've never seen it, but it's like, it has, you know, decent ratings on IMDb. But every time he mentions something on Twitter, I always try to tie it back to like, "Oh, is it just like Pinhead from your Hellraiser movie, or is it?" I just want him to acknowledge it in some way, shape, or form.
Bilmo's gonna end up in Scott Derrickson's house one of these days with a Kathy Bates mallet from Misery. Like, "It wasn't your first movie, Scott."
I just see him outside his house, like, hey, what about Hellraiser 2, dude?
Look at me.
No, dude, it's like the fifth. I think it's like the fifth installment of Hellraiser. I haven't seen any of the Hellraiser movies, which I really am trying to make a point to watch the first one because I've always wanted to watch it. But I'm fascinated with this Hellraiser Inferno. I need to watch it so I can.
Hellraiser has one of those all-time VHS covers.
Yes,
like the Blockbuster, you'd go and be like, "Holy shit, something goes down." In
it's
this
abrasive.
Movie. Yeah,
it's a very abrasive.
He's got all the nails or pins in his head. You're like, something's happening with that one.
Yeah. So if you ever see Scott Derrickson out there tweeting him, just give him some.
Give an old fuck you from Bill Murray, you know.
Just say, "Hey, you made Hellraiser, man. I want you to admit it.
Own up, buddy."
Yeah. So anyway, there's the brief feud I have, ongoing feud I have with Scott Derrickson.